طيب إن شاء الله تعالى. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. I commence in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. I send salutations of prayers and peace upon the finality of prophets and messengers, Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, upon his family, his companions, and all who follow him in righteousness until the day of judgment. Indeed, the best speech is the book of Allah Jalla wa Ala, the Quran, and the best guidance is the guidance of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Beloved brothers and sisters, alhamdulillah, we are continuing on looking at the book When Muslim Marriage Fails. Last week we took the story of a young woman who culturally went and married back in her country of Pakistan and who had a very bad experience. And we took the story from her side of the story. What the author of the book does now is that it gives us both sides of the story. And now we're looking at a critical analysis of his side of the story and his excuses for his domestic violence and the likes. So like last week, we're going to take her side, then we're going to take an analysis given by one of the people who analyzed the story, and then we'll give some extra points of benefit, inshallah ta'ala, from there. So he commences by saying that the woman he was going to marry always acted as if she was better than him. From the time they were married, he says she behaved as if she was doing him a favor by even sitting near him. He said, I could tell right away that she was going to have to be kept in line. SubhanAllah. I can tell right away that she was going to have to be kept in line. I've always liked the challenge and knew I can face the challenge of being married to this American. I don't know why she was so full of herself. She wasn't even that pretty. While completing my residency in Pakistan, I had many more beautiful nurses who would have paid much more attention to me. This girl, on the other hand, could care less for my status and my family name. Everyone in my village thought she was an amazing catch. She was my ticket to America. She was my ticket to America where I could really make some money and enjoy my life as a doctor. My parents passed away and my brothers encouraged me to marry this girl. They did not know that she was not like their wives, that she wasn't docile and she wasn't obedient. They did not know that she was an American spoiled brat. I thought that once I closed the doors to our home, that she would know how to act like a good wife. I also knew that if she didn't, that a little teaching would go a long way. I did not feel anything towards her at that moment, but America was a big hook for me. I had been struggling to make ends meet as a village doctor, and I did not have much money. Now, out of the blue, America is being offered to me on a silver platter. I had my eyes on the village girl, but her parents were poor, and they would probably bring us to a dead end of poverty. Upon first meeting the parents of this girl, I noticed that grace and prestige that followed them around like a glowing aura. I have never met such well-educated and refined people in our village, and figured that America would do the same for me. This was my way out, my escape out of a life of hard work and little pay. My sister did not want me to marry her, but I acted like I made Salatul Istikhara and convinced her of my American vision and that I should marry the American girl. During my third visit to the family, I could hear the girl laughing loudly and how she sent a young child with the mirror to try and look at me without even asking her parents' permission. I made mental notes of these things and know that I would have to quickly correct the poor habits of this sly and inappropriate conduct. Our wedding took place like many others. I sent her back to America with a nice sum of money to get things started for the life we will soon be living together. She took my money in the most ungracious way. My assumptions were that her brother or father would handle the financial matters, but apparently she felt that she had the right to be involved as well. I forgave her though, because of the respect I had for her parents. I knew that once I arrived in America, that I would have more than enough resources to buy whatever I wanted. Upon my arrival to the airport, and to my dismay, I seen my wife walking while wearing jeans and a casual shirt. Did she not know the etiquette of welcoming her new husband? I greeted her in a respectful way and then turned all of my attention to her parents, who were truly deserving of my affection, and my respect. America was not how I expected it. It was desolate. Streets were crowded, and the houses looked like they were falling apart. Our apartment had such a horrible stench, and my strangely quiet wife was doing nothing to help alleviate my transition. I thought that a little intimacy right when I got in the apartment might set us both at ease, but I believe it only made things more strained on the first evening we spent together. Afterward, she cooked up a meal that made me vomit horrendously just by merely looking at it. I could not help but wonder where this woman squandered all the money that I gave her. The apartment was horrible and in a bad neighborhood. I could not find a job in my profession without first having to jump through hoops. While I was struggling to provide for the family, my wife had the audacity to suggest supplementing my income to help me, as if I were not a man enough to do it alone. I am a doctor, for crying out loud. The first time I hit her, I just lost control of my temper. However, I do believe she was being a bit dramatic regarding it. I will honestly say that I did not recognize the strength of my own hand and the fragility of my chunky wife. I do not believe that the premise of the punishment was out of line. When you have a wayward child, you must strike him or her occasionally to ensure obedience, as my father clearly taught his 7 children. It was unfortunate that she could no longer visit her parents due to her repulsive skin, which retained big marks that should not have been there when I hit her. However, it was best because her parents were quickly becoming pompous busybodies, asking me about when I would take my medical exams. Her friends were also a bad influence, and I quickly stepped in and forbade her from seeing them as well. Since I had yet to meet a person who would be a good influence in this country, I decided she was better off having absolutely no friends at all. Her friends were also about, I decided, right, I may have hit her a few more times, he says, whenever she needed a simple reminder on how to act. I never intended to leave bruises, but her misbehavior often warranted a heavier hand. I often imagined marrying the woman I should have married back in Pakistan, and I simply grew angrier with this American who made me change my path. In this country, I could no longer even pray because of the time spent at work and the blatant lack of a muezzin who would call the adhan to community prayer. Then surprisingly, good news came to me unexpectedly. I was going to be a father. I decided that my son would live a much better life than I had, and he would have the chance to make choices I was never given. My horrid wife even decided to take that away from me as well. The final beating that I gave her was one that she well deserved. I was so sorry that it sent her to the hospital, but her insolence had reached an unprecedented peak. And I really could not take this any longer. I handed her back to her parents so that they could deal with this ungrateful woman that they had raised. I was glad we lost the baby because I no longer wanted to have ties to her. After paying hefty penalties and fines, I fled this country and I returned to my homeland. I married the woman I was meant to marry, and I am a proud father of 3 boys and 2 girls. Occasionally, I keep my wife and children in line, but they do not need such a heavy hand as my ex-vile wife. I am a successfully practicing doctor and a respected member of our village. This is the life that I deserve. If I had hurt my ex-wife in any way, then I'm sorry. But I'm sure that I am nothing more than a distant reminder for her now, and that she is a happily married woman living with someone who can tolerate her unkind ways and knows how to keep her in line. Subhanallah. The analysis is done by Sister Salma Al-Kadi Abu Ghidiri. And Sister Salma, she commenced by going back to the very first verse that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he started with what he says that he created for you spouses from among yourselves so that you may live with them in tranquility and so that you may find amongst one another love and mercy. She states that a big issue in the Muslim community is that we don't know how to apply these teachings given to us by Allah and His Messenger. She stated that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was a person who brought happiness and joy into his home. He was a playful, helpful person, someone who shared in the responsibilities of the home. When his wives expressed discontent, he gave them the option to accept this standard of living, meaning Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or to be released in kindness from their marriage. Before the couple in this story came together, she says there were already issues that should have been addressed. The young woman was exhibiting symptoms of depression that needed attention. Remember, she said she was going to the weddings and she was putting on all of his makeup and her face was breaking out and that she was gaining weight. Her parents' anxiety to marry her off and their desire to conform to cultural expectations blinded them from seeing the risk factors that were presented by marrying their daughter off to this man. Salma, she goes on saying that spending some time talking to each other before deciding to get married may have uncovered the husband's hidden goal of seeing his wife as a ticket to America. His assumptions that she would be a traditional wife could have been answered, and his ideas of keeping her in line could have been seen or perceived from his traditionalist mindset. His unrealistic expectations of life in America as an immigrant and many other issues contributed to the chasm between them. No time had been given to come to agreements regarding finances, nothing regarding the respective roles of the husband and the wife, nothing regarding how to handle cultural differences, and even nothing to address the daily aspects of hygiene and food. The couple was a risk due to multiple factors, she says. Lack of preparation before marriage, the incredible stress affecting the husband due to the change in social status, the husband's depression, lack of coping mechanisms and problem-solving skills, lack of agreement on gender roles, and most importantly, the husband's belief that violence was an acceptable or even necessary tool to correct problems. Subhanallah. The intense period of violence, Sister Salma says, followed by the intense honeymoon phases after violence was issued. The cycle continued to repeat itself, frequently with the violence increasing in severity each time. And she says, and abusers abuse because they know that they can. Abusers abuse because they know that they can, right? And because abuse, and because they know that they can, and because abuse effectively controls the victim's behavior. The attitudes and abusive behaviors are often passed from generation to generation, meaning they've learned this from their families, from their fathers and from their grandfathers and the likes. And as was the case of this husband in this case study that we're doing, abuse will only end when we recognize its symptoms and when we refuse to be silent about the abuse itself. Subhanallah. Wa alaikum salam, Brother Richard, and all of those who have joined us on Zoom and online, inshallah ta'ala. Beloved brothers and sisters, Subhana Rabbil Azim, before going into taking some other points of benefit, I don't know how my sisters are feeling after hearing this story, but it definitely boils my blood, subhanallah. And what Sister Salma stated, that the big issue in our Muslim community is that we don't know how to apply these teachings given to us, is a very, very big problem. The Messenger of Allah and Allah has given us principles for us to live by. But in many instances, our beloved brothers and sisters are taking on their cultural practices over and above the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you take your cultural practice and you put it above the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we find that these types of issues come forth. We saw that the girl, she never saw the man. She never got to talk to him. The family just took her to Pakistan. They married her off, subhanallah. He gave her some money. He came back to the States when he was ready after getting, mashallah, his green card or whatever it was. And there was no process whatsoever of getting to know these individuals, subhanallah. And I know I just asked the brother the other day, subhanallah, we were sitting down for some dinner, and I asked him, he was in the process of getting to know his intended. And I said, how long before you get married? How many times do you have to sit with her? He said, only 3. And I was like, wow. He was like, is that too much, Sheikh? Too short? I'm like, 3 times for me doesn't seem like enough, right? What do you learn in 3 sittings of maybe a half hour to an hour, right? The person has a lifetime of things that they have done, subhanAllah. Wa alaikum salam, Sister Marisol. The person has a lifetime of things that they have done. They have family members you haven't gotten to know. They may have children you haven't yet met. There's questions you haven't yet answered. There wasn't enough time for you guys to be in scenarios where days may not have been so good and may have been bad. And how did you respond? And how did all of that fall into place, right? And subhanAllah, we wonder why so many of our marriages are failing. Not to say that you have to wait months and years and the likes, inshallah ta'ala, but you need to do due diligence, inshallah ta'ala, to assure that the person whom you are marrying, inshallah ta'ala, is a person whom you have some knowledge of, that you are aware of, inshallah ta'ala. You've been able to dialogue and converse with that person and ask them critical questions. See what the response to those critical questions were. Look at the man, he says, she wasn't even that pretty, right? Obviously, for him, the ticket was the blue passport, coming to America, inshallah ta'ala. He didn't care how she looked, and the status of her parents, right? He was giving her parents more attention than he gave to her because he thought he would come to America and be this big doctor and live in this palace in the burbs, right? Subhanallah, because this is the mentality that they have from over there about what America entails and America has, right? And because of these different cultural practices, unfortunately, this girl who was an American born now gets taken back to her country, her homeland, and he, in his mind, is getting married according to his cultural traditions. And subhanAllah, her in her mind, she's an American, you know what I mean? And she has never been to Pakistan, never lived there, never experienced what life is like there. And subhanAllah, automatically there's going to be a clash. There's going to be a clash, right? Even today, subhana rabbil azim, I receive a phone call, and I think this is an important point. The brother, he says, Sheikh, can I ask you a question? And he says, me and my wife are having a debate that we need solved. My wife says my money is her money. and that she can go into my bank account and look at what I have and use whatever I have and the likes. And that her money is her money, and I can't look at her bank account and I can't use her money or any of that. And I told them, one of the misunderstandings of the women today, that the husband's money is her money, is that she can do whatever she wants with the husband's money. That's not the case Islamically. The husband's money being her money means that he pays the bills and takes care of her. He pays the rent, the light, the electric, he clothes her, he feeds her, and maybe he gives her a weekly stipend, a monthly stipend of some money that, here, honey, this is for you, inshallah ta'ala, to spend. He doesn't have to give her access to his account. He doesn't have to give her access to free reign to his money, just like she doesn't have to do it with him, right? But then I told him, what we have to realize is this really a marriage where in the marriage there is really no openness, there is really no, this is our house and this is our money and these are our children, and inshallah ta'ala, we're looking to do what's best for us, right? And we know that, if we want to look at the proof, Abu Sufyan, Hind came and complained to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, "Yeah, Rasulullah, Abu Sufyan is stingy. Can I take what I need from his money?" And the Prophet said, "Take only what you need," meaning don't go beyond that, right? He didn't say you just have free access to do whatever you want with Abu Sufyan's money. La. He says, take only what you need, right? Subhanallah. But we see that Subhana Rabbil Azim, if you want marriage to work, inshallah ta'ala, if you enter marriage with this is mine, this is yours, inshallah ta'ala, you're over there, I'm over here, inshallah ta'ala, the mindset is that one day we're maneuvering with the mindset that one day we're not going to be together. And I need to protect myself against you, right? We're not going to be together one day, and I need to protect myself against you. We're not talking about someone who came in and was a millionaire and they're protecting, the great amount of money that they had, from their spouse. And this is why you have prenups and all this other stuff. But we're talking about regular people who are, living check to check and stuff like this, that subhanAllah, they really should just be living family life of, this is what we want to do for each other, inshallah ta'ala, right? All of that of, I'm going to check your bank account, see what you're spending, and now you're going to check my bank account, see what I'm spending. Listen, this is our money, inshallah ta'ala. We're trying to build a future for our kids, a life for our family, inshallah ta'ala, and we expect to be with one another, in paradise and in the life of this world until we pass away, inshallah ta'ala, right? And if we don't, and we decide to divorce, then there's justice. You came with what you came with, I come with what I come with, and if it's my responsibility to give alimony and child support, I give alimony and child support according to what the imam and the judge may lay on me. No problem whatsoever, right? Because at the end of the day, Allah is going to judge the justice that we have between one another and the rights that, mashallah, we are upholding with one another, inshallah ta'ala. But when we enter into marriage with this mentality of tafarruq, right, of these differences, inshallah ta'ala, this splitting, this, I have to protect myself against you. Why? Right? You are a covering for her and she is a covering for you, inshallah ta'ala. That means you are a protection for one another, right? We've discussed this in the courses that come before. And we need to be cognizant of these things, brothers and sisters. And this is why Sister Salma, in her saying that it is important, inshallah ta'ala, for Muslims in the community to know how to apply these teachings in their lives. Because if we don't know how to apply these teachings in our lives, then what we're doing is that we're, from the very beginning, commencing on the wrong foot and ruining our marriages, inshallah ta'ala, because of our ignorance of deen, faith, our ignorance of love, our ignorance of culture, and everything else under the sun, inshallah ta'ala. Some of the points that I took away from his side of the story, right? Because again, last week we took her side, this week we took his side, and then we saw Salma's basically analysis of the situation. For me, the point number one, the man states that from day one, he could tell that his wife was soon going to have to be kept in line. It proves that this man has some type of mental issues, right? That in essence, he was demonstrating characteristics of a man who would result to domestic abuse without thinking about it, right? He says, inshallah ta'ala, I'm going to straighten her out because I don't like these things, inshallah ta'ala. So he was already coming into that marriage thinking, I may have to put my hands on that woman. And because they never conversated, right, and they never talked, she was never able to pick that up from him, right? She was never able to get that cue that warned her that this man probably was a man who was going to be a domestic abuser, right? Number two, he didn't think that she was pretty. His perceptions were that she would be docile, that she would be submissive as the traditional woman of Pakistan, right? And that, you know, we remember, if we look at his story, immediately when he walked into the home, you know, one of the things that he did was he pointed at his feet. He didn't even talk to her, right? He pointed at his feet, meaning massage my feet, subhanAllah. And she goes down and she begins to massage his feet, right? SubhanAllah. So there's not even a conversation of, you know, honey, my love, baby, sweetheart. You know, I was traveling all night, SubhanAllah, in that uncomfortable plane. My feet are killing me. Do you think you can give me a massage, inshallah ta'ala, on my feet, right? No, he pointed on, you know, ordering and commanding, this is my right. And inshallah ta'ala, you're obligated, inshallah ta'ala, to make me feel comfortable, massage my feet, SubhanAllah, right? In his mind, it didn't seem that he wanted a lifelong partner, a wife. It seemed like he wanted someone who was going to be a slave, okay? And again, because of lack of communication, she couldn't pick up on those cues. Number three, he said she was my ticket to America. And Subhana Rabbil Azim, sisters, this mentality has not died in the Muslim community, okay? A lot of individuals, unfortunately, from overseas, and this is not just Pakistan. Right now, this story, Sister Susie just picked different stories from different places, and you know, she wasn't beating down any one nationality of people. Inshallah ta'ala, as you're going to see, all of the stories are from different backgrounds and different nationalities. But we see that this is happening across the Muslim world from people of different nationalities, right? That they see the blue passport as that American ticket, inshallah ta'ala, right? He says, you are my escape from this land where I would have nothing, right? And he thought he was going to come to a land where gold falls from the trees and rains from the sky. Allahu musta'an, right? Then when he arrives here and finds himself living in the hood in America, he regrets it because poverty is what is falling from the trees and not gold, subhanallah. Number four, from the very beginning, this man avoided the Islamic principle, and again, it goes back to Salama's comment of istikhara, right? His sister is telling him, don't marry the girl. He throws and he lies to his sister and says that he made istikhara just so that he can, you know, try to trick her into feeling comfortable that Allah has guided him to making a decision, right? So we see that, subhanAllah, right from the beginning, this man had ill intent of bettering himself in America by using this woman that he wasn't even fond of. And indeed, all actions are judged by their intention, right? As the Prophet ﷺ said, if your intent was to come and marry a man or marry a woman, then you will get what you intended, said the Prophet. Or if your intention was Allah and his messenger, then you will get Allah and his messenger. Meaning that, inshallah, your actions were, mashallah, in line with the Quran and Sunnah, so that everything that you do will be blessed, inshallah ta'ala, right? So we see that his intention from the very beginning was filthy and extremely tainted. Number five, he said that her loudness and trying to glance at him was behavior that was going to have to be immediately corrected, right? He was already plotting that she would be made to submit as they were accustomed to making women submit in his village. He could not accept that his woman culturally comes from a different upbringing, and that perhaps instead of chasing the blue passport, that it was best for him just to marry a woman from his own village, inshallah ta'ala, and get exactly what it was that he wanted, right? But, you know, he preferred to go into the culture shock and then think that he would be able to change that culture shock with his fist. Subhana Rabbil Azim. And this happens frequently, unfortunately, right? That two people get married from two different cultures. And I'm not saying that it's not okay to get married from different cultures. It is perfectly fine. This is the beauty of Islam, right? That inshallah ta'ala, we intermix and we intermingle, inshallah ta'ala, and mashallah, we mix it all up and we come out with beautiful babies that mashallah have all types of different cultural backgrounds, inshallah ta'ala. But we need to do due diligence, inshallah, to learn about the cultures of those people whom we are going to marry, so that we make sure that we understand what they in their mind have as expectations, and that they understand what you in your mind have as expectations. Because as an American Muslim raised in the 21st century, subhanAllah, the last thing they're going to be is this submissive, obedient woman, barefoot, inshallah ta'ala, sitting home, and just being a dog who's going to come and rub your feet and pour your water and take you a bath and put salt in the tub. It's not going to happen. Let's be very realistic. It's not going to happen. You may find a few, mashallah, or more than a few women who will gladly do those things for her husband, and vice versa, inshallah ta'ala. But that is not going to be the case, inshallah ta'ala. And maybe even from back home, you may find women that are not going to give that to you either. Number 6, he said that he thought his father-in-law would handle the money, right? Or his brother, inshallah ta'ala, brother-in-law would handle the money and not the wife, right? He was not looking at the wife as a co-partner, right? Again, he was looking at her as someone who was going to be outside of the picture, not doing anything whatsoever, that she shouldn't play an active role in the finances of the house, that's the man's job only. Again, it's a partnership, inshallah ta'ala. Number 7, he said that he was dismayed when he saw the jeans and the blouse at the airport, the American gear, right? American clothing, and that she didn't know how to welcome her husband. The common mistake of marrying outside of one's culture, again, is not knowing the culture of that person and not having those sit downs and asking those very critical and crucial questions. I had a friend who was married to a Bengali sister, an African-American brother who was married to a Bengali sister. And, he became very frustrated in the marriage with a lot of things. When it came to how they had, relations at night, one of his complaints were all of the lights have to be off in the house, right? The fruits, she would put pepper on the fruits. Why do you put pepper on watermelon and strawberries and melon and things of this nature, right? And, this is how she was raised. This was a cultural context for her, right? This was something that she was brought up doing these things and believing in these things, but because he never asked the questions, they never took the time to get to know one another on that type of a level, right? They had false expectations of one another, and they jumped into a mystery box, right? They had the mystery box in their hand and they're like, wow, I'm going to get something beautiful out of this thing. And when they open it up, drama, right? Because they didn't inquire about what was in the box and what was coming inside of the box, inshallah ta'ala. Number 8, he gave her money thinking that she was going to buy them a palace with money that came from Pakistan and America, right? He was going to come to a place in the burbs and he was going to be laid back, mashallah, plush. And he did not know that the money that he gave her, as she mentions in her story, wasn't enough, or was just barely enough to get a place in the hood. She didn't want to live that way either, right? SubhanAllah. Nor did he ask her when he got here, was this the only thing my money can afford? He thought that she just squandered the money away doing something else with it, right? Lack of communication, subhanAllah. And a lack of, subhanAllah, or making a false assumption that he was going to be living it up in America with money that he sent that wasn't going to be enough. Number 9, he thought of having a little quick 3-minute, as she claims in her part of the story, intimacy, and that this would be good for both of them. They had just walked into the home, right? And he's now looking at her and trying to figure out what's going to happen. And subhanAllah, he decides to, jump on her and have an intimate moment where she says he smelled so bad that even up to after the divorce and after they left, they divorced each other, that every time she smells a bad stench, it makes her think of him, subhanAllah. And that he jumps on her for 3 minutes. After that, he gets up, he goes to the shower, he comes out of the shower, he looks at the food she cooks for him, he throws up because he says the food doesn't look good to him, subhanAllah. And, he commands her to massage his feet, subhanAllah, rather than talking to the new wife, right? Rather than getting to know her, because you haven't gotten to know her, you haven't sat with her, you haven't talked with her, right? Getting to know her and then allowing themselves to both feel comfortable with one another, inshallah ta'ala, before jumping into that intimacy. Just because you got married, a half hour ago or an hour ago, or the man arrives, it doesn't mean that automatically now, you need to consummate the marriage. This is the moment I was waiting for. Nah, slow down. Get to know each other, inshallah ta'ala. Some of the worst experiences in the world, wallahi, tallahi wa billahi, has been the part of intimacy of women with men, with their husbands. That when they have this moment of intimacy with their husbands, it is the moment that they dread for the rest of their lives. I remember a brother from Kenya telling me, a good friend of mine, that when he got married, part of the cultural customs in Kenya is that the fathers, they walk you to the bedroom and that they send you into the bedroom so that you can be intimate with one another. And then the new son-in-law is supposed to come out with the underwear of the woman full of blood to show that she was a virgin. Can you imagine how traumatic that experience is? They walk you to the room, you have to be intimate while your parents are standing outside of the room, and then you have to bring my underwear and show them that I was a virgin. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, right? And this is why, again, knowing what those cultural practices are so detrimental and so important, inshallah ta'ala. Number 10, when his wife tried to assist him, she says, listen, I'll work. He became a busboy. I'll work and I'll add to the family wealth so that we can have a better life. He took offense. He's like, what, am I not a man? You have to work to help me out. He couldn't remove his pride and his arrogance to see that his wife was genuinely trying to assist the home and give her charity to him, as the Prophet ﷺ said that whatever the woman gives is a charity written from her, inshallah ta'ala, right? Instead of humbling himself, right, he dismisses his wife and tells her, no, she needs to stay home. But at the same time, he's pissed and upset regarding the type of lifestyle that they have to live, subhanAllah. Number 11, he said that the first time he hit her, she over-traumatized the situation. There's no over-dramatizing the situation when it comes to beating your wife, brothers, right? That is not acceptable. That is trauma that should never be delivered to another human being whatsoever, subhanAllah. Number 12, just because you were raised with your parents, maybe beating their children, and maybe even you watching your father beat your mother, right? Because some children are raised in these types of homes, it doesn't make it right to take on this negative behavior as your own, okay? This is not a norm that takes place in homes between marriages. It's not a norm that's supposed to take place in homes, inshallah ta'ala. If it was a norm in your home, then don't make it a norm in the home of your wife, inshallah ta'ala, and amongst your children, inshallah ta'ala. That is a sickness that needs to be eradicated from the homes altogether. Number 13, and we have two more after this, and we'll open up the floor. He did not think that America had anyone that can be a positive influence on his wife. Can you imagine? Right? And sometimes we run into people that have this mindset, right? Yet he wanted to come to the land that rains gold and silver, right? And because of this, he removed her from all of her friends. He isolated her completely, subhanAllah. And we know of cases like this, Allahu Akbar, and Allah Musta'an, right? This is slavery, this is oppression, this is every type of negativity that you can even imagine, subhanAllah, and oppression of the human being and their life, keeping them subjugated in their homes with no connection to the community, no connection to friends whatsoever. What kind of practice is this? What kind of man does this? And what kind of family allows a man to inflict this upon their family, right? And that perception of we're not Muslim enough, we're not believers, we can't be righteous because we are Americans, right? SubhanAllah. And this is, again, this isn't to say that all people think like that, right? This is an analysis of this man's story, inshallah ta'ala. But we know that some people do think this way, and we make dua for them. We make dua that Allah allows them to see the light of Islam, because obviously, again, going back to Sister Selma's point, they are ignorant of how to live Islam and understand Islam, right? SubhanAllah. Number 14, he blamed his wife and America on him not praying, right? That the masajid were too far, that there were no mu'adhin calling the adhan as a reminder. Since when is prayer only done when the mu'adhin calls the adhan and you can hear it? Since when is prayer only done within the masjid, inshallah ta'ala? The man had no self-accountability, right? And this demonstrates that, subhanAllah, he could have possibly suffered from some type of mental illness, and Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala knows best, right? But he had no self-accountability. He was blaming everything that was happening in his life to someone else, rather than saying, inshallah ta'ala, these are the cards I've been dealt with, and inshallah ta'ala, I need to figure out how to maneuver now with these cards that I have been dealt with, inshallah ta'ala. The last one, inshallah ta'ala, or the last point in concluding, he said she deserved that final beating, right? And this was the beating where he threw her into the window and he really hurt her bad, right? And he killed her unborn child. He said he was happy that the baby died so that he wouldn't be connected to her anymore, right? It shows you the state of mind of this individual. This man seemed to be a complete psycho. Allah knows best, right? He ends by saying that he fled the country and escaped jail, basically, went back home and married in his village and had 5 kids, 3 boys, 2 girls, right? And that occasionally he still needs to keep his family in line. Subhanallah, right? Physically striking them, but not as bad as he used to strike his ex-wife. Showing us that this man has not lived up to the errors of his ways, and he continues to be a person that inflicts trauma, not only to his wife, but also on his children. And he says, and I'm sorry, but I'm sure that my ex-wife moved on, right? No one moves on from that type of a traumatic situation. The beatings that you left her with, throwing her through glass, killing her child, who moves on from these types of things? How can she possibly have moved on, possibly go on to marry someone else when she still has all of this trauma that she has faced with, and probably going through counseling and therapy and everything else under the sun, while you move on, you marry someone else, and you continue to inflict harm, on those new family members that you have in your life. And again, brothers and sisters, this all brings us back to sitting down, as Sister Selma says, and really getting to know the person whom you are marrying, inshallah ta'ala. Don't do those overnight marriages. Don't do those blue passport marriages, without them being legit marriages that these people legitimately really want to marry you because of you, and they don't want to come over here because they think it's raining gold and silver outside, inshallah ta'ala, right? And we talked about this in our first marriage course. We talked about this in our second marriage course, inshallah ta'ala. And again, we are bringing it to you in the third marriage course because Allah says, فَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ ذِكْرَ تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Remind, because verily the reminder benefits the believers. And we're trying to assure that these type of situations are not situations that you and I are falling into, inshallah ta'ala. We're analyzing this, again, not to look at, the faults of the Muslim community and throw the faults of the Muslim community out there. But the reality is that every community has these types of faults, inshallah ta'ala. And like we mentioned last week, if we bury them under the sand and we stick our head in the sand, how do we begin to grow and transform past these situations that are afflicting, right, our community so much, right? We're getting calls all of the time for these types of things, inshallah ta'ala. And the only way we can get past this is through education, inshallah ta'ala, through having patience and sabr, right? And inshallah ta'ala, depending on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and trusting in Allah, that we can take our time when it comes to marriage. And inshallah ta'ala, there's no need to rush it, right? And that we can have a beautiful marriage and find those people that we want. And as parents, we need to make sure that as well, we are not pushing our kids into cultural issues that are going to bring them problems and possibly have them risk their lives, inshallah ta'ala, right? That inshallah ta'ala, we are also following the Quran and Sunnah, and that we don't care about what the other people say, because remember her parents, it was the people saying, oh, your daughter's not married yet. She's an old whack. She's old. She's not going to be able to get married. You know what I mean? You're not going to be able to find anybody for her. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? That's madness. Because a girl is 22 years old. Now she's too old to marry. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And then you marry her to some old man because that was the only person you can find from back home. Come on. Subhanallah. And part of that also was that the girls in her college were, doing things that they weren't supposed to do. So he looked at marriage as the solution to help get his daughter out of those type of situations. And marriage may not be the solution to get your daughter out of those type of situations. He took her out of one situation and placed her in something that was much more worse. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. And we open up the floor, inshallah ta'ala, for anyone who has comments, wants to share their experience, their feelings regarding these situations, or may have questions, inshallah. And again, you can unmic yourself. You can send it privately in the chat. You can send it openly in the chat. All of that is okay, inshallah ta'ala. We respect all of it. Or you or those who are following online with us as well can place it in the chat online as well, inshallah ta'ala. So bismillah, the floor is you guys, belongs to you guys, inshallah. I would definitely love to hear from our sisters and what they think and what they feel and how this made them feel. Sister, now sisters.
Sharifa. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna be honest, this whole situation got me triggered, right? I didn't even get past the whole hitting and the I just kind of got stuck on that, the green card and the visa and the domestic violence. I do want to say this though. I agree with what you said about sitting down, getting to know a person is so important. And sitting down 3 times, you're not going to really know a person. In my personal opinion, I think 3 months. This is what I tell my kids, right? My adult kids. It's halal dating. I mean, I know as Americans, dating is part of our culture. And as Muslims, we don't date, right? In my opinion, you have to talk to someone for 3 months. And I say 3 to 6 months, actually, because after 3 months, that person can't hold their mask, right? We're speaking to the other person's ambassador, right? And that ambassador, can't stay out front longer than the 3 months. Usually after the 3 to 6 months, you really start to see a person's personality, how they treat people. Pay attention to how they speak to their mother, because the way they speak to their mother is the way they're going to speak to you. Mm-hmm. And really just ask all the questions that you can really think of. And I think the other thing is, as women, we go in to a situation and we see a brother, oh, he's Muslim, he prays, he knows Quran, and we think, okay, this is a good brother, but we're not looking at the red flags. Mm-hmm. They're overlooked, right? Mm-hmm. And we're not understanding, like, don't go in thinking, okay, this is the one. We have this mentality. Okay, he's Muslim, he's got a job, he prays, he goes to the masjid, he's a good brother, this is the one. But we're not listening, right? We're hearing with our heart and our mind, but we're not listening to the words. And this is not just for the sisters, it's for the brothers as well, right? We're not listening to the person's emotional IQ, where do they stand? Not necessarily politics or anything like that. How are they speaking about how they feel, how they want to be treated? But as women, before we get married, we really need to understand who we are as a person. We need to address any childhood trauma. I think that's something that a topic that needs to be discussed. People think of trauma, rape as trauma, and it is trauma. But there's also childhood trauma. If you're a woman who has grown up without their father, that's trauma. And we're searching, as women, we're searching for that void that we did not receive from our father, right? And we're thinking we're going to get that from our husbands, okay? And that's something that needs to be healed within us. If you're getting married and divorced and you realize that it's the same personality or the same environment or whatever, then it's time to take a step back and say, okay, what's going on with me that I keep choosing the same personality? You know, and there's nothing wrong. Don't be ashamed of the mistakes or whatever that you've endured. Those are all lessons
Yes.
that we have to learn from. But the first thing is we have to be open enough to ourselves to admit to ourselves that there's an issue, whether it's emotionally, physically, whatever, that there's an issue. And then we have to, of course, make dua about it, ask Allah to give us clarity about it. You know, there's a lot of, you know, psychological terms that as people of color, we don't have a name. Narcissism. When I listened to this story, this brother was a very narcissistic person, and narcissists are very abusive. He was gaslighting her, not only physically, emotionally, you know? And these are terms that a lot of us, including myself, did not realize there was a name for it, right? There's a thing, right? So it's all about educating ourselves emotionally and on these undesirable behaviors. But we have to look within ourselves first, and we have to be okay to be alone on our path, right? The Prophet ﷺ spent time in the cave before he received revelation. And it's a very lonely path, and we have to be okay with it. These brothers, you know, predators, I'm not going to say these brothers, predators, they look for women who are desperate, who just want to be married, want to be in love. And you have to fight that loneliness, and you have to see people, you have to recognize the game, right? You have to recognize the game and say, no, I'm okay. And don't let Shaitan, you know, use these emotions and the loneliness to say, okay, you know, this is the one, he's going to treat you right, and then you're missing the red flags again. So there's this whole scenario, it's really got me triggered, but it really, there's so much to unpack here. I think we'll be here all night, but I think, you know, the thing, this is my lesson, you know, everything I'm saying, this is something that I've come across that I'm learning about myself. Understand who you are as a Muslim woman. Learn your deen. It's not the obligation of your husband to teach you how to pray. Allah did not say, tell the Prophet Iqra. He told the Prophet Iqra. He didn't tell, you know, Khadijah Iqra. He told the Prophet Iqra. He's given us a commandment to pray, not to read, not for your husband to teach you to read. Okay, this is the main thing. Our relationship with Allah, we have to establish that first and foremost. So understand who you are as a woman, learn your deen, and be open to yourself about any trauma or any behavioral or mental or emotional issues that you've had from before you were Muslim, or in your childhood, or with your parents. Understand what codependent behavior is, read up on it, get to know yourself on that level, on your spiritual level, on your emotional level, and be okay with it and heal yourself and learn to move past that. Yeah, there's so much to say. SubhanAllah.
Jazakallah khair, sister. Jazakallah khair. It's a pleasure to have you with us, inshallah ta'ala. Alhamdulillah. And alhamdulillah, I think that's, you know, you hit some very key points, subhanAllah. You know, and it's okay, you know, we weren't born knowing everything, alhamdulillah. You know, just because we grew up in a home with parents doesn't mean we know how to love, right? It doesn't mean we understand love. It doesn't mean we know relationships. It doesn't mean we understand what relationships are. It doesn't mean we understand what being a husband and a wife are. And as you said, some of us come with childhood traumas. Broken home is a childhood trauma, depending on what type of broken home you come from, right? And what you saw in that home between your two parents as well, right? So there's a lot, subhanAllah, that can affect the marriage once you come into that marriage, as our sister was saying, subhanAllah. And we need to make sure that, we're not bringing all of that baggage, us ourselves, right? Bringing that baggage into the marriage, inshallah ta'ala, as well. But at the same time that we are, as she mentioned, looking out for those red flags, inshallah ta'ala. And then just the issue of halal dating, we'll clarify that, inshallah, so that people don't take my sister's words and, try to throw her under the bus. Islamically, inshallah ta'ala, normally, especially amongst the Arabs, right? What is done is that they'll have the Katb Kitab, and this is basically a signing of the contract between these two individuals, inshallah ta'ala, who are wedding and going to get married, inshallah ta'ala. They've gotten to know each other to a point, whatever that length of time is. The parents have been involved in the process. The wali has been involved in the process. They've had time to sit down, and really they want to take things to the next level, inshallah ta'ala. They both decided that. They have the Katb Kitab, and then basically this gives them time to kind of get to know each other a little bit more, inshallah ta'ala. But underneath what's known as the marriage contract, right? Ultimately, in their essence, they are married, inshallah ta'ala, but the parents lay down expectations of no sex, no going out and kissing, and none of these types of things. You can go out and further get to know one another and explore, each other, by not physically exploring each other, but mentally and emotionally exploring one another, inshallah ta'ala, to assure that this is something that you want to go ahead and continue on and do. And I've seen situations where they have done this, and then the man says, or the woman says, you know what, after 6, 9 months, a year, even before they've decided to go ahead and now, take that final step of the walima and announcing it to the community, this isn't for me. That's not the person for me. I've seen those red flags. I've seen some signs that demonstrate to me that this is not something I want to be involved in. And because there's no relations between them, no intimacy between them, it's an easy out. It's easy for them to step out of this marriage, inshallah ta'ala, and then go on and look for someone else, inshallah ta'ala. And if they, mashallah, think that everything is fine, then they kind of continue on their journey, inshallah ta'ala, and then they have the big wedding party and the walima, and they tie it into the community, and they move in together, inshallah ta'ala, and then they become officially married, and then they consummate at that point. So some people coin this term as kind of halal dating, inshallah ta'ala, but the reality is that you are still contracted and under contract, and alhamdulillah, not breaking any of the laws within the Quran and the Sunnah, inshallah ta'ala. I know some people don't like the concept, and others think that it is a wise concept, especially using with our youth nowadays, because of this whole issue of getting to know one another and trying to, mashallah, evade some of the negativity and some of the things that they can fall into, inshallah ta'ala. But again, this is a choice that each person makes on their own. One of our sisters placed here in the chat, it is important that the red flags are never ignored. Unfortunately, many times they are. Sometimes they are ignored because they want that person to be the one. Right? They want that person to be the one, the Bollywood movie that they saw running through the blades of grass, and they jumped into each other's arms and they loved each other and they fell in love, and she picked her foot up when they first kissed, and all of this dreamy stuff that we find ourselves finding and fantasizing over due to TV, inshallah ta'ala, sometimes, or that they are afraid, she says, that they will not find anyone else. And I can tell you, Allah has placed someone there for everybody, right? There's someone there for everybody. There's someone there for you, inshallah ta'ala. And in many of these instances, if you see those signs are Allah saving you possibly from something, a serious situation that you may not want to be involved in. Similar to this, domestic abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, right? SubhanAllah, whatever it may be, inshallah ta'ala, that may bring you harm later on, don't ignore those signs. Those signs are there from Allah for a reason, inshallah ta'ala, and they are helpful, right? Our brother Hanif Davis, hafidhullah ta'ala, mashallah, may Allah preserve him, alhamdulillah, and he does a lot of work in this realm and in this field. He says knowledge of behavior and mental health is very important, right? So knowing the different behaviors, knowing the issues of mental health and surrounding what surrounds mental health, all of these things are very important, inshallah ta'ala, because again, it cues you into signs. We have a lot of people who suffer from all types of things, And that's not to say that these are negative, right? Because one of the other things we want to not do is not share that, right? So some people may be bipolar and they may not share it, but it's important to share it with that person who you're bringing into your life, because we know that you are okay. Alhamdulillah, with medication, you can be perfectly fine 100%, inshallah ta'ala, but there may be instances that a change of dose, a stopping in medication for a day or two, inshallah ta'ala, can throw things off, right? And that other spouse should know how to deal with that situation if they encounter that with you, inshallah ta'ala, okay? Whether that's the husband or whether that's the wife, inshallah ta'ala. And it's a right that they should know. It shouldn't be a surprise to them, inshallah. And then now all of a sudden they find themselves trying to figure out, what am I going to do in this situation that I had no knowledge of, right? And it doesn't mean that that may break the marriage, right? Inshallah ta'ala, that this person may say, I don't want to be married to you because of that, right? They may, mashallah, actually like who you are, love who you are, love your personality. And they may say, you know what, subhanAllah, this is a thing I'm willing to deal with, inshallah ta'ala, and sit by your side, inshallah ta'ala, and manage alongside with you. And we'll work through this together, right? Alhamdulillah, you don't know until, inshallah ta'ala, you expose that, inshallah ta'ala, and share that, right? So hiding things in the marriage, know that, you know, those skeletons in those closets will eventually come out. As Sister Sharifa says, you know, 6 to 9 months later, inshallah ta'ala, a year later, things begin to come out of the closet, you know what I mean? Willingly or unwillingly. You know, you can't hide them forever, inshallah ta'ala. And oftentimes when they come out later, it's much worse than when you bring them out in the beginning and you're honest and upfront with that person that you are bringing into your life, inshallah ta'ala. Wa alaikum salam, Ibn Hassan, inshallah. Anyone else, inshallah? Any other comments, inshallah?
I have a question.
Go ahead, David.
So something you said in the lecture that stuck out to me about how the abuser only abuses because they know they can. So how can we help prevent the ummah from thinking they can get away with this type of abuse, like with neglecting the rights and purposes of marriage?
Well, you know, that's a definite something that is a great challenge and difficult, right? We don't, you know, the only way I can see that we begin to kind of nip this in the bud is that, you know, you report, right? You see something wrong, you report it, inshallah ta'ala. You see something wrong, you try to go ahead and have that person who's being abused, inshallah ta'ala, you know, report it as well, inshallah ta'ala, right? Because oftentimes there's enough fear, they place enough fear into that person to think that they're gonna, you know, either kill them or harm someone in their family or the likes, inshallah ta'ala, and they end up keeping themselves quiet and they don't expose it, especially to the law and things of this nature. As we mentioned last week, you know, go to the police, inshallah ta'ala, expose it to your father, expose it to the imam of the community, inshallah ta'ala, right? And then I think that these things, when they come out in our communities, inshallah ta'ala, that we have to be very keen on making sure that we don't allow people to, you know, just marry these people without knowing, right? There's the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where the woman came and she asked him, you know, about getting married to a man. And he says, you know, this one, he keeps the stick on his shoulder, right? And this one, he's a bit stingy, right? Meaning this one, he keeps the stick because he's a little loose-handed, right? The Prophet ﷺ is informing her of what type of men she has before. You know, he says, marry this one instead, right? SubhanAllah. You know, so I think that, you know, again, educating the community is going to be one. Having more sessions like these, inshallah ta'ala, is very important. One of the other things that we're trying to do is get together with our department, and I have a meeting with them tomorrow that deals with our mental health side of things and therapy and counseling and all of that. And what we want to do, inshallah ta'ala, is begin to have a session on site, and we'll do it online as well, both inshallah ta'ala at one of our centers every month, October, November, December, inshallah ta'ala, where inshallah ta'ala we can begin to address these different issues as well with professional health and mental health specialists, inshallah ta'ala, and begin to, mashallah, continue advising the ummah on the do's and the don'ts and what they should be doing and how they should be maneuvering, inshallah ta'ala, so that together we kind of come up with a solution for the problem we have at hand, right? I'm not going to come up with all of the solutions by myself, inshallah ta'ala, but I think that question that you asked, David, I think it is a communal question that we need to kind of bring to the community and bring to our different specialists, inshallah ta'ala, and the imam as well, the imams as well, and then together, inshallah ta'ala, develop a plan and a strategy on how to begin to try to eradicate this the most we can. Because there's no way that we're going to eradicate it completely. It's almost impossible. I don't believe we can. Allah can eradicate it if He wants completely, inshallah ta'ala, but Allah ta'ala knows best. There's always going to be some type of domestic abuse, inshallah ta'ala, that is present, because it has been present for decades, right, and centuries, inshallah ta'ala. But I think we can deal with it at the community level, inshallah ta'ala, and make sure that it is not happening within our communities. So if a brother in my community, he is, mashallah, found to be guilty of being a domestic abuser, then naturally I'm not going to go ahead and just marry him to another sister in my community, right? I'm going to make sure that that thing is known to anyone who comes and wants to sit down with this man and marry this man, that he was a domestic abuser. Not to say that you can't change, right? Because that is another thing that we discussed last week. People can change. They may have to go through a process of change, inshallah ta'ala, right? And this is why we have our mental health specialists, and we have our therapists and our social workers, inshallah ta'ala, that are part of that problem, of a part of the solution of solving those problems, inshallah ta'ala, if people really want to solve that problem. But like Sister Sharifa says, you have to work on yourself, right? You have to want to work on yourself. You have to want to better yourself, inshallah ta'ala. And if those individuals better themselves and they work on themselves and they prove that they have done that, inshallah ta'ala, then naturally we're not going to hold that against them for the rest of their lives as well, because Allah calls us to be forgiving, merciful, kind, inshallah ta'ala, and to understand that all of us do make mistakes, inshallah ta'ala, some worse than others, but that inshallah, if we turn and we make tawbah and we dedicate our life to Allah, that yes, just like the man who killed 100 people, he sincerely wanted to have a life of iman, and because of that, Allah, forgave him and entered him into paradise. So again, finding that balance between all things, inshallah ta'ala. My brother Richard, assalamu alaikum. He says, do I have to have more than one wife? I was told I have to have at least two, or another Muslim wife, because my wife is not Muslim yet, inshallah. No, brother, you don't have to have more than one wife, inshallah ta'ala. There's nothing that says you have to have two wives, inshallah ta'ala. And your wife not being a Muslim does not mean that now you have to go get a Muslim wife because she is not Muslim. Not at all, inshallah ta'ala. But we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide your wife, to open her heart, inshallah ta'ala, and that through you, she sees the beauty of Islam. And that when she sees the beauty of Islam and its practice and the way you pray and the way, mashallah, you behave and your character and your traits, that you all, attribute back to the Quran and Sunnah, that she begins to say, subhanAllah, this is something beautiful that I want to share in this journey with you. And Allah opens her heart at the end of the day and allows her to embrace Islam, and that both of you will both be Muslim together, inshallah ta'ala. Don't give up hope, inshallah. Continue to pray for her, continue to make dua for her, and continue, inshallah ta'ala, to have wisdom and patience in dealing with her, inshallah ta'ala. And, don't be from those who try to force our practices upon her, because at the end of the day, when you try to do that, then it may actually push her away rather than drawing her in, inshallah ta'ala. So no, you don't have to, brother, get another wife, inshallah. Any other final comments, inshallah ta'ala? We are at 9:10. I don't want to keep everybody here too long. I know it's a hot topic, inshallah, and as Sister Sharifa mentioned, we can be here all night talking about this, but inshallah, we hope that this is going to be a continuous conversation that we have with each other, inshallah. And again, it is not about airing our dirty laundry, but it is more about trying to find solutions for that dirty laundry, inshallah ta'ala, and stop hiding it within our communities, because way too often people are coming to me as an imam when the house is on fire. And we're not talking about, the first floor is on fire. We're talking about the whole house is engulfed in flames. And then now it's almost too late, too hard, too difficult to put out the fires in that house, inshallah ta'ala. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, help us and aid us. And Brother Hanif, Jazakallah khair, may Allah reward you as well with good. And inshallah ta'ala, maybe we can have you come on and invite you as well, Brother Hanif, to talk about some of these different things as well. Alhamdulillah, as I know you brothers are doing good work out there regarding the subject matter as well. It would be greatly appreciated, and we can connect offline, inshallah. So with that, if there's no other questions, I don't see anyone unmiking themselves. If there are no other questions, comments, inshallah ta'ala, corrections, then inshallah ta'ala, we will end our session here. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept it from us, and that He, mashallah, continue to illuminate you all so that Islam is always in your heart, in your mind, in your soul, and that, mashallah, Allah is always first in your life. And as long as Allah is first in your life and first in the life of your spouse, then inshallah ta'ala, you will be walking down a path that is straight and full of light and full of guidance and full of signs, with more guidance, inshallah ta'ala. And if you hold on to that, you'll find success at the end. And we ask Allah wa ta'ala to grant us the ultimate success, His mercy, and entrance into His paradise. Ameen. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.